The morning sun cast long shadows across the abandoned warehouse district in Kandahar. Team Alpha moved through the maze of concrete and steel like ghosts, their movements precise and deadly quiet. Each man carried 40 pounds of gear, weapons ready, eyes scanning every corner for threats. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison led from the front, his weathered face hidden behind tactical goggles. Behind him, his 5-man SEAL team followed in perfect formation. They had done this dance 1,000 times before. Intel suggested a high-value target was hiding somewhere in this industrial wasteland, and they were here to bring him home. Tango 6, this is Alpha Leader. Morrison whispered into his throat, mic approaching target building. No visual on hostiles yet. The voice that crackled back through their earpieces was crisp and professional. Copy, Alpha Leader. Overwatch has you covered. Good hunting. Morrison smiled grimly. Overwatch meant someone was watching their backs from a distance, probably perched on a rooftop with a sniper rifle. He had requested the best shooter available for this mission. Command had simply said the sniper was highly qualified and left it at that. The warehouse loomed ahead, its broken windows staring down at them like empty eyes. Morrison held up his fist, and his team froze instantly. Something felt wrong. The silence was too complete, too perfect. Even in abandoned areas, there should be some sign of life. Birds, rats, insects. Something. Alpha 2, take point. Morrison ordered quietly. Sergeant Pete Williams nodded and crept forward, his M4 carbine sweeping left and right. Williams had been with Morrison for 3 years. The man could smell trouble from a mile away, and right now, his body language screamed danger. As they approached the warehouse entrance, Morrison's radio crackled to life. Alpha Leader, this is Overwatch. I count 12 hostiles inside the building. Thermal imaging shows their position to ambush anyone coming through the main entrance. Morrison frowned. The voice was definitely female, but something about it seemed familiar. He pushed the thought aside. Now is not the time for distractions. Overwatch, can you give us a better entry point? Affirmative. There's a service entrance on the east side. 2 guard posted there, but I have clear shots on both. Morrison made quick hand signals to his team, and they began moving toward the east wall. As they positioned themselves near the service entrance, Morrison could see 2 armed men smoking cigarettes and talking in hushed tones. Overwatch, we're in position. Take the shots when ready. Copy that. On my mark. 3, 2, 1 mark. 2 quiet pops echoed across the empty lot. Both guards dropped instantly, their cigarettes still glowing on the ground beside them. Morrison had heard a lot of sniper shots in his career, but these were different. Perfect placement, perfect timing, no wasted movement. Clean shots, Overwatch. Moving in now. The team slipped through the service entrance like smoke. Inside, the warehouse was a maze of shipping containers and machinery. Morrison could hear voices speaking in Pashto somewhere deeper in the building. According to Intel, their target was Malik Hassan, a bomb maker responsible for at least 20 American deaths. Alpha Leader, you have 4 hostiles moving toward your position from the north corridor, the female voice warned. They'll round the corner in 10 seconds. Morrison positioned his men behind a stack of crates. Right on schedule, 4 armed Taliban fighters appeared around the corner. The SEALs opened fire in perfect coordination. All 4 men went down without getting off a single shot. Good work, Alpha Team, the Overwatch voice said. Target is in the office area, 2nd floor, northwest corner. Be advised, he has at least 6 men with him. Morrison frowned again. The voice was definitely familiar now, but he still could not place it. More importantly, how was this sniper getting such detailed intelligence? Thermal imaging was one thing, but knowing exact positions and numbers required extraordinary equipment and skills. The team moved through the warehouse methodically, clearing each section before advancing. The Overwatch sniper continued providing perfect intelligence, warning them of threats before they materialized and guiding them through the maze of obstacles. As they reached the stairs to the 2nd floor, Morrison's radio crackled again. Alpha Leader, hold position. You have 3 hostiles coming down those stairs in 5 seconds. The SEALs pressed themselves against the walls on either side of the staircase. 3 men with AK-47s came thundering down the steps, completely unaware of the Americans waiting for them. It was over in seconds. "How are you getting this intel, Overwatch?" Morrison asked as they climbed the stairs. There was a pause before the reply came. "Let's just say I have a good view of the situation, Alpha Leader." Something in her tone made Morrison's blood run cold. He knew that voice. Impossible as it seemed, he knew exactly who was watching over them. But it could not be her. She was supposed to be dead. The second floor was a series of offices and conference rooms. Morrison could hear Hassan shouting orders in the distance, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. The terrorist leader knew he was trapped, and desperate men did dangerous things. "Target is in the corner office," Overwatch reported. "He's got 6 men positioned at the windows and doorway." Classic defensive formation. Morrison studied the layout ahead. The corridor leading to Hassan's office was a killing field. Anyone trying to approach would be cut down before taking 3 steps. They needed a distraction or another way in. "Overwatch, is there another approach to that office?" "Negative on alternate routes, but I might be able to create a distraction. There's a fuel tank on the roof directly above Hassan's position. I could put a round into it, cause some chaos." Morrison considered this. "Will it bring down the building?" "Negative. Small tank, limited blast radius. Will create smoke and confusion but won't compromise structural integrity." "Do it." The explosion came 30 seconds later. Not large, but enough to shake the building and fill the upper floor with thick black smoke. In the chaos that followed, Morrison heard gunfire from the direction of Hassan's office. But these are not the AK-47s his men carried. These were precision rifle shots, spaced exactly 3 seconds apart. "Overwatch, report." Morrison called into his radio. 6 hostiles neutralized. "Target is alive and secured. You can move in now, Alpha Leader." Morrison's team rushed down the smoke-filled corridor to find all 6 of Hassan's bodyguards dead on the floor. Each man had been killed by a single shot to the head, fired through the windows from an impossible angle. Hassan himself sat in the corner, hands zip-tied behind his back, looking terrified but unharmed. "How the hell did you get in here?" Morrison demanded, staring at Hassan. The terrorist just shook his head, babbling in Pashto about a ghost shooter who had appeared from nowhere. "Alpha Leader, this is Overwatch. Package is secure. Suggest immediate extraction. Local forces are responding to the explosion." Morrison looked around the office, trying to figure out how the sniper had managed to neutralize 6 targets from outside the building while keeping Hassan alive. The angles were impossible. The windows faced different directions. No single shooter could have made those shots. Unless... "Overwatch, what's your position?" Morrison asked. "Elevated position with clear sight lines." "That's all you need to know, Alpha Leader." Morrison's hands were shaking now. The voice, the impossible shots, the way she seemed to anticipate every move the enemy made. It was just like before in Syria when she had saved his entire team with shots that defied physics and common sense. "Alpha Team, move out," Morrison ordered. "We've got our package." As they carried Hassan down to the first floor, Morrison kept glancing at the windows, trying to spot their guardian angel. But whoever she was, she remained invisible. "Alpha Leader, this is Tango 6. Be advised, we have vehicles approaching your position. Looks like local military responding to reports of explosions." Morrison cursed under his breath. They needed to move fast. "Overwatch, can you buy us some time?" "Already on it. I've got clear shots on the lead vehicle's engine block. That should slow them down." Another impossible shot rang out across the warehouse district. In the distance, Morrison could see a military jeep swerving to a stop, smoke pouring from under its hood. "Tango 6, this is Alpha Leader. We need immediate extraction. LZ Alpha, 5 minutes." "Copy, Alpha Leader. Birds are inbound." The team moved quickly through the warehouse and out into the bright morning sun. In the distance, Morrison could see 2 Black Hawks approaching fast and low. Behind them, the sound of shouting voices and vehicle engines suggested that Hassan's people were regrouping. As they reached the designated landing zone, Morrison made a decision that would haunt him for months. Instead of boarding the helicopter immediately, he grabbed his radio and switched to a private channel. "Lena, is that really you?" The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds. Morrison could hear the helicopters getting closer, could see dust clouds rising from multiple directions as enemy forces converged on their position. Finally, the voice came back, softer now, almost vulnerable. "Hello, Jake. It's been a long time." Morrison's knees nearly buckled. Lena Gray was supposed to be dead. He had attended her memorial service 18 months ago. He had watched them present her mother with a folded flag and a medal for valor. He had stood at attention while they played taps for the best sniper he had ever seen. "Where have you been?" he whispered into the radio. "We thought you were killed in Somalia." "It's complicated, Jake. Right now, you need to get on that helicopter and get out of here. We could talk later." Morrison wanted to argue, wanted to demand answers, but the Black Hawks were landing now, and Hassan needed to be extracted immediately. As he climbed aboard the helicopter with his team, Morrison kept scanning the surrounding rooftops, trying to spot even a glint of sunlight off a rifle scope. But Lena Gray remained a ghost, just as she had always been. As the helicopters lifted off and turned toward the horizon, Morrison pulled out his encrypted satellite phone and dialed a number he had not used in over a year. It rang 3 times before a gruff voice answered. "Morrison, what the hell are you doing calling this number?" "Colonel Davidson, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Is Lena Gray really dead?" The pause on the other end of the line lasted so long that Morrison thought the connection had been lost. Finally, Davidson spoke, his voice carefully controlled. "Why are you asking about Gray, Lieutenant Commander?" "Because she just saved my entire team's lives in Afghanistan. Either I'm losing my mind, or someone has been lying to me for 18 months. Another long pause. "Morrison, I need you to forget about this conversation. Forget about whatever you think you saw today. Lena Gray died in Somalia on March 15th of last year. That's the official record, and that's what you're going to believe." "But sir, I heard her voice. I know it was her. She made shots that only she could make." "Morrison, you're a good officer and a good man. But you're also exhausted and operating under extreme stress. Sometimes our minds play tricks on us. Sometimes we see things that aren't there because we want them to be true." Morrison felt anger rising in his chest. "Don't patronize me, Colonel. I know what I heard. I know what I saw. Lena Gray is alive, and she just saved 12 American lives. Even if that were true, which it's not, what would you want me to do about it? Gray's file is classified at levels that would make your head spin. If she were alive, which she's not, there would be reasons for that classification. Reasons that involve national security and operations you don't have clearance to know about." Morrison stared out the helicopter window at the Afghan landscape rushing past below. "So what are you telling me, sir?" "I'm telling you to do your job. Morrison, you completed a successful mission today. You captured a high-value target with 0 friendly casualties. That's what goes in the report. Nothing more, nothing less. And if I see her again, you won't, because Lena Gray is dead. And even if she wasn't, she wouldn't be operating in your area of responsibility. Are we clear on this, Lieutenant Commander?" Morrison closed his eyes and tried to process what he was being told. Either his superior officer was lying to him, or he really was losing his mind. Neither option was particularly comforting. "We're clear, sir." "Good. Now get some rest, Morrison. You've earned it." The line went dead, leaving Morrison alone with his thoughts and the steady thrum of helicopter rotors. Around him, his team was celebrating another successful mission, but Morrison could not shake the feeling that he had stumbled into something much larger than a simple extraction operation. As the helicopters approached Bagram Air Base, Morrison made another decision. Official or not, classified or not, he was going to find out what had really happened to Lena Gray. He owed her that much. She had saved his life too many times to simply accept that she was dead and forgotten. But first, he had to figure out how to investigate a ghost who might not want to be found. And he had to do it without attracting the attention of people who clearly wanted Lena Gray to remain buried. The helicopter touched down on the landing pad at Bagram with a gentle thump. As Morrison climbed out and headed toward the debriefing room, he caught a glimpse of movement on a distant rooftop. For just a moment, he could swear he saw a figure in military fatigues watching the helicopter land. But when he looked again, the rooftop was empty, and Morrison was left wondering if Colonel Davidson was right. Maybe stress and exhaustion were making him see things that were not there. Or maybe Lena Gray really was alive, watching over American soldiers from the shadows, protecting them in ways they would never know. Either way, Morrison knew that his life had just become infinitely more complicated. And somewhere in the back of his mind, he could still hear her voice, calm and professional, guiding his team through impossible odds. "Hello, Jake. It's been a long time." The words echoed in his memory as he walked toward his debriefing, knowing that everything he thought he knew about Lena Gray was probably wrong. The question was, what was the truth? And, more importantly, was he ready to handle it when he found out? 3 days after the warehouse operation, Morrison sat in his small office at Bagram Air Base, staring at a computer screen filled with classified personnel files. He had been searching for any trace of Lena Gray for hours, using every database he had access to. What he found made no sense at all. According to official records, Staff Sergeant Lena Gray had been killed in action in Mogadishu, Somalia, on March 15th of the previous year. The report stated that she had been providing sniper support for a Delta Force operation when her position was overrun by hostile forces. Her body was never recovered, which was not unusual in Somalia's chaotic urban warfare environment. But Morrison knew those record relies. He had heard her voice, had seen the results of her impossible marksmanship. Lena Gray was alive, operating somewhere in the shadows of the war on terror. The question was why everyone wanted him to believe she was dead. A knock on his office door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," Morrison called, quickly closing the classified files. Sergeant Williams stepped inside, his expression troubled. "Sir, we need to talk. Privately." Morrison gestured to the chair across from his desk. Williams had been his second-in-command for 3 years. If anyone could be trusted with sensitive information, it was Pete Williams. "What's on your mind, Pete?" Williams glanced around the office, then leaned forward and spoke quietly. "Sir, I've been thinking about that operation 3 days ago. Something doesn't add up." "What do you mean?" "The Overwatch snipers, sir. I've worked with a lot of snipers over the years, and I've never seen anything like that. The shots she made were impossible. The intelligence she provided was too good. It was like she could see through walls." Morrison felt his pulse quicken, so he was not the only one who had noticed. "Go on." "I did some checking, sir. Unofficial checking. And I found something interesting." Williams pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Remember Operation Nightfall in Syria? The mission where we rescued those hostages from the chemical plant?" Morrison nodded. That operation had been 18 months ago, right before Lena Gray's supposed death. It had also been the last time Morrison had worked with her directly. "I pulled the after-action report, sir. The Overwatch sniper on that mission made 17 confirmed kills from distances ranging from 800 to 1,200 meters. Every shot was a headshot. 0 misses. The report describes the shooting as supernatural and defying conventional understanding of ballistics." Williams paused and looked directly at Morrison. "Sir, the voice pattern analysis software we use for identifying enemy communications? I ran our radio recordings from 3 days ago through the system. The Overwatch sniper's voice is a 98.7% match for the sniper from Operation Nightfall." Morrison leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. Williams had just confirmed what Morrison already suspected, but now they had proof. Scientific proof that Lena Gray was alive and operating in Afghanistan. "Pete, this conversation never happened. Do you understand me?" Williams nodded grimly. "Yes, sir. But there's more." "More what?" "I've been asking around very carefully about similar operations. Missions where SEAL teams or other special operations units received sniper support from an unidentified shooter. Sir, there have been at least 12 such operations in the past year, all across Afghanistan and Iraq, all with the same pattern of impossible shots and perfect intelligence." Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. 12 operations? "Yes, sir. And in every case, the official records list the sniper as either classified or unknown. But the soldiers involved all describe the same thing. A female voice, perfect marksmanship, and shots that seem to violate the laws of physics." Morrison stood up and walked to his window, looking out at the busy airfield. Somewhere out there, Lena Gray was operating without official support, without official recognition, saving American lives one impossible shot at a time. But why? And who was backing her? "Sir, there's one more thing," Williams said quietly. "I think someone else is looking for her too." Morrison turned around. What do you mean? 2 days ago, a man came around asking questions about our mission. He claimed to be from the Inspector General's office, but something about him felt wrong. He was asking very specific questions about our sniper support. Questions that suggested he already knew more than he was letting on. Did you get his name? Agent David Richardson. But when I called the IG's office to confirm, they said they had no record of anyone by that name. Morrison felt the situation getting more complicated by the minute. If other people were looking for Lena Gray, and they were willing to use false identities to do it, then she might be in danger. Pete, I want you to be very careful about who you talk to regarding this matter. And I want you to start keeping a record of anyone else who comes around asking questions about our operations. Already on it, sir. After Williams left, Morrison sat alone in his office, trying to piece together the puzzle. Lena Gray was alive, but officially dead. She was operating without support, but with access to incredible equipment and intelligence. Someone was looking for her, but they were using false identities to do it. Morrison made a decision that would change everything. He picked up his encrypted phone and dialed a number he had found in Lena's old personnel file. It was listed as her emergency contact, a woman named Sarah Chun in San Diego, California. The phone rang 4 times before a cautious voice answered. Hello, MS. Chun, this is Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, United States Navy. I believe you knew Staff Sergeant Lena Gray. There was a long pause. Lena's dead, Commander. She died in Somalia last year. Miss Chun, I need to meet with you in person. I have information about Lena that I think you need to hear. What kind of information? Morrison took a deep breath. The kind that suggests she might not be as dead as everyone thinks. Another pause, longer this time. Commander, I think you should know that other people have called me asking about Lena. People who wouldn't identify themselves properly. I stopped answering my phone for a while because of them. Miss Chun, I'm going to be in San Diego next week for a conference. Would you be willing to meet with me? Somewhere public, somewhere safe. Why should I trust you? Morrison thought about this carefully. Because Lena saved my life more times than I can count. And if she's in trouble now, I owe it to her to help. After a moment, Sarah Chun gave him the address of a coffee shop in downtown San Diego and agreed to meet him the following Tuesday at 2 p.m. Morrison spent the next week preparing for his trip to California. He gathered every piece of information he could find about Lena Gray's past, her training, her family background, and her military service record. What emerged was the picture of an extraordinary soldier and an even more extraordinary person. Lena had grown up in rural Montana, the daughter of a single mother who worked 3 jobs to make ends meet. She had learned to hunt at age 8 and was winning shooting competitions by age 12. When she turned 18, she enlisted in the Army with the stated goal of becoming a sniper. Her training records were remarkable. She had scored perfect marks on every marksmanship test, had excelled in survival training, and had shown an unusual aptitude for mathematics and physics. Her instructors described her as a once-in-a-generation talent and the most naturally gifted marksman we have ever seen. But what really caught Morrison's attention were the psychological evaluation reports. Every evaluation mentioned Lena's unusual ability to remain calm under extreme stress and her almost supernatural situational awareness. One psychologist had noted that Lena seemed to process sensory information differently than most people, as if she could perceive details that others missed entirely. Morrison also found records of Lena's deployments. She had served 3 tours in Iraq and 2 in Afghanistan, always in a sniper role, always with distinction. Her confirmed kill count was classified, but Morrison found references to record-breaking accuracy and unprecedented success rates. The more Morrison learned about Lena Gray, the more convinced he became that her death in Somalia had been staged. Someone with her skills and training did not simply get overwhelmed by enemy forces. Lena Gray was too smart, too careful, too good at staying alive to die in a random firefight. Tuesday morning, Morrison flew from Kabul to San Diego via a military transport. As his plane descended toward the California coast, he found himself wondering what he would learn from Sarah Chun and whether he really wanted to know the truth about Lena Gray. The coffee shop was crowded when Morrison arrived, filled with the usual mix of college students and business people. He spotted Sarah Chun immediately. She was sitting in a corner booth, wearing a blue sweater and jeans, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked nervous. Morrison approached the table slowly, keeping his hands visible. "Miss Chun, I am Jake Morrison." She looked up at him with intelligent brown eyes, studying his face carefully. "You look like a seal," she said finally. Lena always said seals had a particular look about them. Morrison slid into the booth across from her. "How well did you know Lena?" "We were roommates in college, best friends for 8 years before she enlisted. She was the maid of honor at my wedding." Sarah's voice was steady, but Morrison could see pain in her eyes. "When they told me she was dead, I felt like I lost a sister." Morrison leaned forward. "Sarah, I need to tell you something that's going to sound impossible, but I need you to listen to the whole story before you decide whether to believe me." Over the next 30 minutes, Morrison told Sarah everything. The warehouse operation, the impossible shots, the voice he recognized, the subsequent investigation. Sarah listened without interrupting, her expression growing more troubled with each detail. When Morrison finished, Sarah sat quietly for a long time, staring into her coffee cup. Finally, she looked up at him. "Commander, there's something I need to tell you. Something I never told the investigators after Lena's supposed death." Morrison waited. 3 weeks after the memorial service, I got a phone call. Very brief, very cryptic. The caller didn't identify herself, but the voice sounded exactly like Lena. She said 3 words, "I'm okay, Sarah." Then she hung up. Morrison felt his heart racing. "Did you report this to anyone?" "I tried. I called the Army liaison officer who had been handling Lena's affairs. He told me it was probably a prank call. That grief sometimes makes people hear things that aren't there. He suggested I seek counseling. But you didn't believe him." "No, I didn't." "Because the caller knew something that only Lena would know. When we were in college, Lena and I had a code phrase we used when one of us was in trouble but couldn't speak freely. If Lena was in trouble, she would work the words blue Montana sky into a conversation. If I was in trouble, I would say California sunshine." Sarah paused and looked directly at Morrison. "Commander," after the caller said, "I'm okay," she added, "remember the blue Montana sky." Then she hung up. Morrison leaned back in the booth, his mind reeling. Sarah's story confirmed everything he had suspected. Lena Gray was alive, but she was also in some kind of trouble. Trouble serious enough that she had to fake her own death and operate in complete secrecy. "Sarah, has anyone else contacted you about Lena recently?" "Yes. About 6 weeks ago, a man came to my house. He claimed to be from the Department of Veterans Affairs, said he was updating their records on deceased veterans. But his questions were strange. He wanted to know about Lena's hobbies, her friends, places she might go if she was trying to hide." "Did he give you a name?" "Agent Johnson. But when I called the VA later to confirm, they said they had no record of anyone by that name working on deceased veteran records." Morrison nodded grimly. The same pattern Williams had described was repeating itself. Someone was looking for Lena Gray, and they were willing to lie to get information about her. "Sarah, I think Lena is in danger, and I think the people looking for her are not the good guys." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "What can we do? If she's really alive, how do we help her?" Morrison thought about this carefully. "I have an idea, but it's risky. If Lena is monitoring communications related to her old life, she might be watching for any unusual activity involving people she cared about. If we can create the right kind of signal, she might try to make contact." "What kind of signal?" "You said you and Lena had code phrases. What if you posted something on social media that included those code phrases? Something that would look innocent to anyone else, but would stand out to Lena?" Sarah considered this. "I could post something about missing my college roommate, include some memories from Montana and California, work in both code phrases naturally." "Exactly. And then we wait to see if she responds." They spent another hour planning exactly what Sarah would post and when. Morrison gave her his secure contact information and made her promise to call him immediately if anyone else contacted her about Lena. As they prepared to leave the coffee shop, Sarah grabbed Morrison's arm. "Commander, if Lena really is alive, and if she's doing what you describe in Afghanistan, then she's still fighting for her country. She's still protecting American soldiers. Even though everyone thinks she's dead, even though she's completely alone, she's still doing her duty." Morrison nodded. That sounds exactly like the Lena Gray I knew. Promise me something, Sarah said. Promise me that if you find her, you'll tell her that her friends haven't forgotten her. Tell her that people still care about her, even if she thinks she has to face this alone. I promise, Morrison said. As Morrison flew back to Afghanistan that night, he found himself wondering what kind of operation Lena Gray had gotten involved in. Whatever it was serious enough to require her to fake her death and abandon everyone she cared about. It was also important enough that she continued to risk her life saving other soldiers, even though she received no recognition and no support. But Morrison was determined to find her and get answers. Lena Gray had saved too many lives to be left alone in the shadows. Whatever trouble she was in, whatever enemies she was facing, she deserved to know that her friends were looking for her. The question was whether Morrison would be able to find her before her enemies did, and whether he was prepared for what he might discover about the real reason Lena Gray had to disappear. Sarah Chin's social media post went live on a Thursday morning. She had crafted it carefully, describing memories of her college roommate who had died serving in the military. The post mentioned camping trips in Montana under beautiful blue skies and study sessions in California enjoying the golden sunshine. To anyone reading casually, it seemed like a heartfelt tribute to a fallen friend. Morrison was back at Bagram Air Base when he received Sarah's encrypted message confirming the post was live. Now came the hard part, waiting to see if Lena Gray would notice the signal and respond. He did not have to wait long. Friday morning, Morrison was reviewing intelligence reports when his secure phone buzzed with an encrypted text message from an unknown number. Blue Montana sky looks beautiful today. Coffee shop on Chicken Street, Kabul, 1,400 hours. Come alone. Morrison stared at the message, his heart pounding. Chicken Street was a famous bazaar in downtown Kabul, always crowded with locals and tourists. It was also a place where an American soldier would stand out like a beacon. Meeting there would be dangerous. But the message had used Sarah's code phrase. Lena Gray was ready to make contact. Morrison arranged for a day of administrative leave and caught a helicopter flight to Kabul International Airport. From there, he took a taxi into the city center, wearing civilian clothes and carrying only a concealed sidearm. The driver dropped him off 3 blocks from Chicken Street, and Morrison walked the rest of the way, constantly checking for surveillance. The coffee shop was exactly where Lena had said it would be, squeezed between a carpet store and a shop selling traditional Afghan clothing. Morrison entered cautiously, scanning the room for threats. The interior was dimly lit and filled with the smell of cardamom tea and cigarette smoke. He spotted her immediately, sitting alone at a table in the back corner. Even after 18 months, even though everyone believed she was dead, Lena Gray looked exactly as Morrison remembered. Short auburn hair, piercing green eyes, and the kind of alert posture that marked her as a professional warrior. Morrison approached the table slowly, keeping his hands visible. "Hello, Lena." She gestured to the chair across from her, without smiling. "Hello, Jake. You look older." Morrison sat down, studying her face. Up close, he could see changes that had not been visible from a distance. She was thinner than before, and there were lines around her eyes that suggested months of stress and sleepless nights. "You look like hell," Morrison said honestly. Lena's mouth twitched in what might have been a smile. "That's what happens when you're officially dead, but still working full-time." A young Afghan man brought Morrison a glass of tea without being asked. Lena had clearly been here for a while, long enough to establish herself as a regular customer. That level of preparation was typical of her approach to everything. "Why did you fake your death?" Morrison asked quietly. Lena sipped her tea and studied his face. "Because someone was trying to kill me. And not enemy combatants, Jake. Americans." Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean? Do you remember the Somalia operation? The one where I supposedly died?" Morrison nodded. He had read the official report dozens of times. "The mission was a setup from the beginning," Lena continued. "We were told we were supporting a Delta Force raid on a terrorist safe house. But when we got there, the building was empty. No terrorists, no weapons, no intelligence. Just a trap designed to eliminate specific people." "Specific people?" "Me and 3 other soldiers who had seen too much during previous operations. We have been involved in missions where the official story did not match what actually happened on the ground. Someone decided we were a liability. Morrison leaned forward. What kind of missions? Lena glanced around the coffee shop, ensuring they were not being overheard. Operations where American weapons ended up in the hands of terrorist groups. Missions where high-value targets were allowed to escape instead of being captured. Convoys that were deliberately routed through ambush zones. You're talking about treason. I'm talking about a network of people within the military and intelligence community who are selling information and equipment to our enemies. They have been doing it for years, making millions of dollars while American soldiers die. Morrison felt sick. How high does it go? High enough that they can arrange for inconvenient witnesses to disappear. The other 3 soldiers who were with me in Somalia are actually dead. Jake. I only survived because I saw the ambush coming and managed to escape before they could confirm my death. Why didn't you report this to higher authorities? Lena laughed bitterly. I tried, but the network includes people at every level of command. Every time I tried to report what I had seen, the information somehow found its way back to the people I was trying to expose. That's when I realized the only way to stay alive was to disappear completely. Morrison processed this information, trying to understand the implications. So you've been operating alone for 18 months? Not entirely alone. There are a few people within the intelligence community who suspect what's happening, but they can't act openly without proof. They provide me with limited support and intelligence, but mostly I'm on my own. That explains the equipment and intelligence you had during our warehouse operation. Lena nodded. I've been working to document the network's activities and gather evidence of their crimes. Every mission I support, every soldier I protect, brings me closer to exposing the truth. Morrison thought about the pattern Williams had identified, the 12 operations where Lena had provided sniper support. You've been protecting American soldiers while investigating traitors within our own military. Something like that. But Jake, my situation just became much more complicated. How so? The network knows I'm alive. They've been searching for me for months, using false identities and cover stories. But recently, their search has intensified. I think they're close to finding me. Morrison remembered his conversation with Williams about the mysterious Agent Richardson. They've been asking questions about our mission. Someone came to Bugram claiming to be from the Inspector General's office. That's what I was afraid of. They know I've been providing overwatch for SEAL operations. They're probably monitoring all communications related to missions where unidentified snipers provided support. Lena reached across the table and placed her hand on Morrison's arm. Jake, you need to be very careful. If they think you're helping me or looking for me, you'll become a target too. Morrison looked into her green eyes and saw the same determination that had made her the best sniper he had ever worked with. Lena, you can't keep doing this alone. Let me help you. You can't help me without destroying your own career and possibly getting yourself killed. Maybe, but I can't just walk away and pretend I never saw you. You saved my team's lives. You've been saving American lives for 18 months without any support or recognition. I owe you more than that. Lena was quiet for a long time, clearly weighing her options. Finally, she spoke. If you really want to help, there is something you could do. But it would be extremely dangerous. Tell me. I've been tracking a major weapons transfer that's supposed to happen next week. American military equipment being sold to Taliban forces in exchange for cash and opium. If I can document this transaction and identify the Americans involved, it would provide the evidence needed to expose the entire network. Morrison felt his pulse quicken. What kind of weapons transfer? Stinger missiles, Jake. 24 surface-to-air missiles that were supposedly destroyed in a depot explosion 6 months ago. But they weren't destroyed. They were stolen by people inside our own military and are about to be sold to our enemies. Morrison understood the implications immediately. Those missiles could be used to shoot down American helicopters and transport planes. Every American aircraft in Afghanistan would be at risk. Where is this transfer supposed to happen? A remote valley about 60 miles north of Kandahar. The location is perfect for the sellers because it's isolated and difficult to reach. But it's also perfect for my purposes because I can observe the entire transaction from elevated positions. You want me to help you document the transfer? I need someone to help me record the transaction, and identify the American personnel involved. Someone I trust completely. Someone who understands the stakes. Morrison thought about this carefully. What Lena was proposing would put his career and his life at risk. If they were caught, they would be charged with treason and probably executed. But if they succeeded, they would expose a network of traitors and save countless American lives. What would you need me to do? Meet me at a location I'll specify. Bring recording equipment and a secure communication device. Help me document everything that happens during the transfer. Then, help me get that evidence to people who can act on it without being compromised. Morrison nodded slowly. When and where? Lena pulled out a small piece of paper and slid it across the table. Coordinates and timing are written there. Memorize them, then destroy the paper. Morrison studied the coordinates and timing information, committing every detail to memory. The meeting point was in a remote mountain area that would require careful navigation to reach. Jake, before you agree to this, you need to understand something. If we're caught, I can't protect you. The people we're up against have resources and connections that reach all the way to Washington. They will not hesitate to eliminate anyone who threatens their operation. Morrison looked at the woman who had saved his life countless times, who had been fighting alone for 18 months to protect soldiers she would never meet. The decision was easier than he had expected. I'll be there. Lena smiled for the first time since their conversation began. Thank you, Jake. I know what I'm asking you to risk. You're not asking me to risk anything. You're giving me a chance to do the right thing. There's a difference. They spent another 20 minutes discussing operational details and communication protocols. Lena had clearly thought through every aspect of the mission, identifying escape routes, contingency plans, and alternative meeting points if something went wrong. As they prepared to leave the coffee shop, Morrison had one more question. Lena, after this is over, after we expose these people, what happens to you? Can you come back from the dead? Lena's expression grew sad. I don't know, Jake. I've been dead for 18 months. I've done things during that time that might be difficult to explain or justify. Even if we succeed, I might have to stay dead forever. Morrison felt a surge of anger at the unfairness of her situation. That's not right. You've been fighting for your country while everyone thought you were dead. You deserve to have your life back. Maybe. But right now, I'm more concerned about making sure other soldiers don't die because of these traitors. Everything else can be sorted out later. As they left the coffee shop separately, Morrison found himself wondering whether he would ever see Lena Gray again after their upcoming mission. Win or lose, succeed or fail, there was a very good chance that their meeting in the mountain valley would be their last. But as Morrison made his way back through the crowded streets of Kabul, he felt a sense of purpose he had not experienced in months. For the first time since learning that Lena was alive, he was actually doing something to help her instead of just investigating her situation. In 4 days, he would meet her in the mountains to document a transaction that could expose a network of traitors within the American military. The mission would be dangerous, possibly suicidal, but it was also the right thing to do. Morrison only hoped that he would prove worthy of the trust that Lena Gray was placing in him. She had been fighting alone for too long, carrying a burden that should have been shared by others who cared about protecting American lives. Now, finally, she would not have to face the danger alone. As Morrison caught a taxi back to the airport, he destroyed the paper containing the coordinates and timing information, just as Lena had instructed. But the numbers were burned into his memory, along with the image of her green eyes reflecting a determination that 18 months of isolation and danger had not been able to break. In 4 days, Staff Sergeant Lena Gray would no longer be fighting alone. The question was whether 2 people would be enough to take down a network of traitors who had been operating with impunity for years. Morrison was about to find out. The mountain valley stretched out below Morrison like a bowl carved from stone and shadows. He had been lying motionless behind a cluster of rocks for 3 hours, waiting for Lena Gray to make contact. The coordinates she had given him led to a perfect observation point overlooking the valley floor, where a dirt road curved between steep canyon walls. Morrison carried a high-definition camera with a telephoto lens, encrypted recording equipment, and his standard combat gear. Getting to this location had required a 12-hour hike through some of the most treacherous terrain in Afghanistan, but Morrison had arrived exactly on schedule. A small movement to his left caught his attention. Morrison turned slowly and saw Lena emerging from what had appeared to be solid rock. She was wearing full camouflage and carrying a sniper rifle that Morrison did not recognize. "Hello, Jake," she whispered as she settled into position beside him. "How long have you been here?" Morrison asked. 6 hours. I wanted to make sure you weren't followed." Morrison studied the valley floor through his binoculars. "When is this supposed to happen?" "According to my intelligence, the American convoy should arrive first, around 1,600 hours. The Taliban buyers will come from the north about 30 minutes later." Lena adjusted her rifle scope and checked her equipment. "Jake, before this starts, there's something else I need to tell you. Something I didn't mention in Kabul." Morrison felt a familiar chill. "What?" "The leader of the American side of this operation is someone you know. Colonel Richard Davidson." Morrison's blood turned to ice. Colonel Davidson was his direct superior, the man who had told him to forget about Lena Gray's existence. "Are you certain?" "Completely certain. Davidson has been running this network for at least 3 years. He's been using his position to identify valuable military equipment that can be lost or destroyed and then sold to enemy forces." Morrison thought back to his phone conversation with Davidson after the warehouse operation. The colonel's insistence that Lena was dead, his warnings about classified operations, suddenly took on a completely different meaning. "Davidson knows I've been asking questions about you," Morrison said. Lena looked at him sharply. "What did you tell him?" "I called him right after our mission, told him I thought you were alive. He ordered me to forget about it. That's why they intensified their search for me. Davidson realized that if you recognize my voice, other people might too. He's probably been monitoring all communications related to operations where I provided support." Morrison felt a wave of guilt wash over him. His phone call to Davidson had made Lena's situation more dangerous. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. It's not your fault, Jake. You couldn't have known Davidson was compromised. But it means today is even more important than I thought. If we can't expose Davidson and his network today, they'll disappear completely, and other soldiers will die." Morrison adjusted his camera equipment and checked the battery levels on his recording devices. "How many people are we expecting?" "Davidson will have at least 4 men with him, probably more. The Taliban buyers usually travel in groups of 8 to 10. We'll be outnumbered at least 12 to 1. What's our exit strategy if things go wrong?" Lena pointed to a narrow canyon behind their position. "There's a trail through those rocks that leads to a secondary observation point about half a mile away. If we have to retreat, we go there and wait for darkness before trying to reach our vehicles." Morrison nodded, checking his watch. It was 1,545 hours. If Lena's intelligence was correct, they would not have to wait much longer. At exactly 1,600 hours, a convoy of 3 vehicles appeared on the dirt road leading into the valley. Morrison focused his camera on the lead vehicle, zooming in to capture clear images of the occupants. Colonel Davidson was sitting in the passenger seat of the lead Humvee, wearing civilian clothes but clearly in command of the operation. Morrison recognized 2 of the other men as soldiers from Davidson's staff. The third vehicle contained wooden crates that were undoubtedly the stolen Stinger missiles. "Got them," Morrison whispered, taking dozens of photographs as the convoy moved into position in the center of the valley. 20 minutes later, the Taliban buyers arrived from the north. They came in 4 pickup trucks, heavily armed men scanning the surrounding mountains for threats. Morrison continued photographing everything while Lena provided security, her rifle trained on the valley floor. "Range to the center of the valley?" Morrison asked. 840 meters, Lena replied. "Within effective range for both my rifle and your camera." The meeting between Davidson and the Taliban leader proceeded exactly as Lena had predicted. Money was exchanged for weapons, hands were shaken, and agreements were made that would result in American aircraft being shot down by American-made missiles. Morrison documented everything, capturing clear images of Davidson personally handing over technical manuals for the Stinger missiles. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. But as the transaction neared completion, something went wrong. One of Davidson's men pulled out a radio and began speaking rapidly. Moments later, the man pointed directly toward Morrison and Lena's position. "They've spotted us," Lena said, her voice calm but urgent. "We need to move. Now." Morrison began packing his equipment while Lena provided covering fire. Several shots rang out from the valley floor, bullets striking the rocks around their position. "How did they find us?" Morrison asked as they scrambled toward the escape route. "Thermal imaging, probably, or maybe electronic surveillance equipment that detected our camera signals." More shots echoed through the mountains as they reached the secondary observation point. Morrison could see armed men climbing the canyon walls, trying to flank their position. "Jake, we need to split up," Lena said. "You take the evidence and get it to safety. I'll hold them off and try to create a distraction." Morrison stared at her. "I'm not leaving you here alone. You have to. That evidence is the only way to expose Davidson's network. If both of us get caught, everything we've done is worthless." Before Morrison could argue, Lena was moving again, positioning herself behind a boulder that provided clear shots at their pursuers. Her rifle began speaking with deadly precision, and Morrison could hear shouts of alarm from below as targets began falling. Morrison knew Lena was right. The evidence they had gathered was too important to risk. He made the hardest decision of his military career and began moving toward the escape route, leaving Lena Gray to fight alone one more time. But as Morrison reached the trail leading away from the valley, he heard something that changed everything. Helicopter rotors. Multiple aircraft approaching fast from the south. Morrison looked back and saw 4 Black Hawk helicopters cresting the mountain ridges. But these are not American aircraft. They carried no identification markings, and they were firing on Davidson's position in the valley below. The cavalry had arrived, but Morrison had no idea who they were or whose side they were on. As Morrison watched from his concealed position, the unmarked helicopters systematically destroyed Davidson's convoy and scattered the Taliban buyers. Within minutes, the entire arms deal had been disrupted, and Davidson himself was running for cover behind his burning vehicles. Then Morrison saw something that made his heart stop. One of the helicopters had landed near Lena's position, and armed figures in military gear were approaching her hiding place. Morrison raised his binoculars and focused on the soldiers advancing toward Lena. They were definitely American, but their uniforms carried no unit insignia or identification. As Morrison watched, Lena emerged from behind her boulder with her hands raised. But instead of taking her prisoner, one of the soldiers stepped forward and embraced her. Morrison realized that Lena Gray had not been fighting alone after all. Someone had been supporting her operation, providing backup and resources that she had not told him about. The unmarked helicopters, the tactical team, the perfectly timed intervention, it was all part of a larger operation that Morrison was only beginning to understand. 20 minutes later, one of the helicopters landed near Morrison's position. A figure in combat gear approached, helmet removed to reveal a woman with short gray hair and general stars on her collar. "Lieutenant Commander Morrison," she said, "I'm General Patricia Hayes, Defense Intelligence Agency. I believe you have something that belongs to us." Morrison handed over his camera and recording equipment without resistance. "Ma'am, what just happened here? You and Staff Sergeant Gray just provided the final evidence needed to roll up a network of traitors that has been operating within our military for over 3 years. Colonel Davidson and his associates will be arrested within the hour." Morrison looked toward the helicopter where Lena was waiting. "What about Lena? What happens to her now?" General Hayes smiled. "Staff Sergeant Gray has been working undercover for the Defense Intelligence Agency since her supposed death in Somalia. Her mission was to infiltrate and document this weapons trafficking network while maintaining her cover as a deceased soldier. So she was never really operating alone?" "Not entirely. We provided limited support and intelligence, but she was largely on her own for operational security reasons. The fewer people who knew she was alive, the better her chances of success." Morrison felt a mixture of relief and anger. Relief that Lena had not been abandoned by her government, but anger that he had been kept in the dark about the true nature of her mission. "Why wasn't I briefed about this operation?" "Because we needed your reactions to be genuine. If you had known Lena was working undercover, you might have behaved differently during your interactions with Colonel Davidson. Your phone call to Davidson actually helped us confirm his involvement in the network." As they flew back toward Bagram Air Base, Morrison sat next to Lena in the helicopter's cargo compartment. She had removed her helmet, and, for the first time in 18 months, she looked relaxed. "How long have you been working for the DI?" Morrison asked over the noise of the rotors. "Since before my supposed death. They recruited me after I started reporting suspicious activities during my regular deployments. The Somalia mission was designed to give me a new identity so I could investigate the network without being detected." Morrison shook his head. "You could have told me." "No, I couldn't. The operation required absolute secrecy. Even my handlers didn't know all the details of what I was doing. The only way it could work was if everyone, including my friends, believed I was really dead." Morrison looked out the helicopter window at the Afghan landscape passing below. "What happens now? Do you come back from the dead?" Lena was quiet for a moment. "That's complicated. My cover identity allowed me to operate in ways that might be difficult to explain officially. The DIA is working on a way to bring me back without compromising other operations." General Hayes leaned forward from her seat across the cargo compartment. "What we can tell you, Commander, is that Staff Sergeant Gray's actions over the past 18 months have saved dozens of American lives and prevented millions of dollars worth of military equipment from reaching enemy hands." Morrison nodded, finally understanding the full scope of what Lena had accomplished. She had not just been surviving on her own or protecting random soldiers. She had been conducting one of the most important counterintelligence operations of the war. "There's one more thing," General Hayes continued. "Because of your assistance in this operation, and because of your discretion in handling sensitive information, the DIA would like to offer you a position with our organization. Your skills and experience will be valuable in future operations." Morrison looked at Lena, who was smiling for the first time since their reunion. "What kind of operations?" "The kind where good soldiers do important work that can never be officially recognized," Lena said. "The kind where you make a real difference, even if no one ever knows your name." Morrison thought about Colonel Davidson and his network of traitors, about all the American soldiers who had died because of their greed and betrayal. He thought about Lena Gray, who had spent 18 months dead to the world while fighting to protect her fellow soldiers. "When do I start?" Morrison asked. General Hayes smiled. "Welcome to the DIA, Commander. Your first briefing is tomorrow at 0800 hours. As the helicopter approached Bagram Air Base, Morrison realized that his life was about to change completely. He would be leaving the SEALs behind to join a world of shadows and secrets, of missions that could never be acknowledged, and victories that would never be celebrated. But he would also be working alongside Lena Gray again, protecting American soldiers from threats they would never see coming. After 18 months of believing she was dead, Morrison could not imagine a better way to honor her memory than by fighting beside her once again. The helicopter touched down on the landing pad with a gentle bump. As they climbed out and walked toward the briefing building, Lena grabbed Morrison's arm. "Jake, thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for believing I was alive when everyone else thought I was dead." Morrison looked at his friend, the woman who had saved his life countless times and had just recruited him into the most important mission of his career. "Thank you for coming back from the dead," Morrison replied. "The world is a better place with Lena Gray in it." As they walked into the building together, Morrison could not help but smile. Lena Gray was officially alive again. Colonel Davidson was in custody, and American soldiers were safer because two people had been willing to risk everything to do the right thing. The lone shot that had stopped an entire SEAL team had led to something much bigger than Morrison could have imagined. It had led to the exposure of traitors, the dismantling of a criminal network, and the resurrection of a hero who had never really died. Most importantly, it had proven that sometimes, when good people work together, they really can change everything.